talk to you today about buying a home in Vancouver, or Greater Vancouver. So a little bit about my background. I've been about 30 years in sales and marketing, and I'm basically a residential specialist, but I have done some commercial real estate deals as well, but my focus is on residential. I do love working with first-time home buyers. I love educating you guys and everyone about the process. There is a lot to learn, and I'm happy to help you in the process, because to answer all the questions and make you feel comfortable, that is the goal at hand, and make you so that you're comfortable going forward and there's no regrets, hopefully. Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm also a Medallion Club member, which it means the first 1% of real estate realtors in Vancouver, and I'm a past member and director, volunteer director of the West Side Division of the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, and also co-founder of the West Coast Business Networking Group, which is a networking group that comes together every month for referral purposes and to network amongst ourselves. I am at TRG Realty, and I'm also a mentor there to the new realtors that are coming aboard as well. So, when we get started with real estate, when you're first starting to think about buying a property in Vancouver, first thing that comes to mind is a wish list. What does that mean, a wish list? Basically, everything that you really would love to have in your home. So, first item would be the neighborhood. Perhaps some of you grew up in Coquitlam, or some in West Vancouver, or some in Vancouver. Maybe those are the neighborhoods, those are the communities that you like to stay in. Sometimes that happens, but sometimes you want to move. You want to move outside that community and into a new community. So I always recommend to try to drive around and get familiar with communities. And if you have a little bit of an attachment or someone that's pulling you that way, get to know the community a little bit, so then you're a little bit comfortable with it as well. There's different types of properties, basically from, do you want a brand new property, something that you can just move in, it's fresh, it's clean, it's exciting, no one's ever lived there, you're going to be the first one, or are you okay with a middle-aged, 20 to 30-year-old building, or you don't mind an old-timer over 30 years. And there's a lot of great buildings in Vancouver that are older buildings. Sometimes they have a roof stand and the plumbing and the boilers replaced. These are big items. If they've replaced those things in the old buildings, then it's a solid building. So I will help you determine that when the time comes. And also the older buildings, by the way, are usually the more economical buildings. So I'm talking condos and townhomes here, and houses too. They're usually definitely better priced than the brand new ones, of course. So types of homes, there's, you can buy a detached home, which is you're 100% in control of the home and you call the shots, or you can buy what we call a strata. A strata is basically a condominium or a townhouse or a duplex, fourplex. Any type of property where you're jointly sharing with other owners is called a strata situation. How many bedrooms do you want to have? How many bathrooms? Do you want some outdoor space? Maybe you have a pet. Maybe you want to have the option to rent the property later on. Most stratas have bylaws, okay, a set of bylaws. And these bylaws will either allow pets and rentals, or sometimes they don't allow them, and sometimes they only allow one pet or one rental. So if you have a pet or you want a rental situation in the future, it's very important to know the bylaws of the building. Leaseholds and cooperatives is another one that I'm going to have to get into later. So if you're interested in that, I'll have to just, we'll have to talk about that after, because it's quite a different topic. So when we're ready to begin looking, when I'm going to take you out to start looking at properties, there's different ways to view the properties. I always suggest that open houses is a great way to get to know the properties, whether they're new, middle, old, and the type and the neighborhood. So you're welcome to drop in at open houses, and they're typically on Saturdays and Sundays in Vancouver from 2 to 4, and there'll be scheduled times on MLS listings. Sneak peeks are basically also a way to view a brand new property, and they're usually the first week when it's a brand new property, and they're usually Thursdays or Wednesdays from about 5 to 6 or 6 to 7. And then realtor open houses is also another way for you just to drop in, and they're typically, for example, in kids, they're 10 to 12 on Tuesdays. The realtors opens were typically for realtors only, but now the public are allowed, so you're welcome to those as well. Once we are establishing our situation, our relationship, what I'll do for you is I'll set up a tour, what we call a tour. So I'll get, for example, the top 6 properties, and I'll schedule appointments for you, and I'll take you out on these tours, and we'll see one property after another. And then that way I can show you around and explain each property, the pros and cons, and so forth. That's what we call it tours, and us as agents, we do that for our clients. Buyer protocol, so there's a protocol in place. So the Real Estate Council has brought up numerous new rules now for realtors. So typically, sellers have their own realtor, and then buyers have their own realtor. So that way there's no conflict with each other. So when you go out to open houses, you have to, it is polite to let the realtor know that who you're working with. Like you would say, I'm working with Domingos, or whatever your realtor's name is. So then it's clear and there's no confusion. And then we as realtors will communicate with each other, and your buyer's realtor will find out all the questions you need to know instead of you calling the realtor, the seller's realtor direct. So you've gone out looking, you've seen numerous amounts of properties, you fall in love with your property. This is the one, I have to have this property. So we're ready to make an offer. Okay, what does that mean exactly? I'm gonna just hand out some little notes here. Okay. I'll just start over here. Actually, I'll put it on this side. There we go. Okay. An offer basically comes in the form of a contract called the contract of purchase and sale. This is a legally binding contract between buyers and sellers, and that's what I'm handing out to you today. Okay, if you want to flip over to the next page, the first page on this contract is basically just an information page. So the actual contract itself is usually a 6 to 8 page document. Okay, so the first page will have the seller's name, and it'll have your name as the buyer. And I've chosen here Sean Mendes as the seller. I love him. And the buyer is Jennifer Lopez, because I love her. They're both great. And so I'll be representing Jennifer Lopez. I'm the buyer's agent. Okay, so she's buying Sean Mendes' place, and she wants his penthouse that he knows near the Arbutus Club, because she wants to be close to the Arbutus Club to do her stuff. So we're going to offer, if you go down to item number 1 on the same page, it's a purchase price. That is your offer price, okay? So if Sean Mendes' condo, we're talking about a penthouse here, is worth, he's listed at 1.2, okay? So my job as your realtor is go do the comparables at the area and see, is this a reasonable price? Is it compared to the other listings that have sold in this area? Well, guess what? It's overpriced. It should be listed, it should be about $1 million. So I'll advise that to you. I'll give you advice what it should be in terms of market value, comparative market value. And that's what we're offering here. We're offering $1 million to Sean Mendes for this property. The next item just below that is the deposit. And typically the deposit is 5% of the purchase price. So in this case, it's going to be $50,000. And that money will come due when all the conditions of this contract are fulfilled, which is usually within a week's time. Okay? The $50,000 will come in the way of a bank draft too. It's not just a check you write, it's pretty serious, so bank draft. Okay? And it's payable to TRG Realty and Trust, which is the brokerage of your buyer's brokerage. And that goes into a trust account until completion, and then the lawyers will just take care of that, and that goes towards your purchase price on completion. So on the next, if you turn over the next page, you'll have the terms and conditions. So the terms and conditions are what we call, there's another casual word called subject clauses, and they are basically, we put those in as conditions of this contract. They're usually, we allow about a week's time for you as buyers to fulfill these terms and conditions or subject clauses, okay? I'll just read you the first top 6 terms and conditions because those are the most important. Number 1 is always the financing clause. So Heather's talked to you about financing, the mortgage, you're pre-approved, that's fantastic, but unless Heather advises you that you're free and clear, you don't have to put that financing subject in there, we've got to put it in because typically the bank will want to have an appraisal of the property and they'll want to know the address and make sure that it's not a red flagged property, okay? Number 2 is subject to inspection. Number 2 is subject to title search. So I will review all this with you. The title search is a document that states who's on title. So Sean Mendes holds the title of this property. We want to just make sure he doesn't have legal notifications on a title or any liens on the property or any pending litigation. All these things, the title will show us that information, and I'll help you go through that and make sure it's a nice, clean title. So that's number 2. Number 3 is reviewing the property disclosure statement, which will show us if there's any disclosures of any problems with this property. Okay. Number 4 is the inspection. Okay, so the inspection isn't. It's not. You don't have to do it. It's basically something that I would highly recommend you do. Because an inspector, you'll have to hire an independent inspector, which I'll give you some referrals for that. And he will tell you, he'll give you a report, what the property is, if there's any bad things, if there's good things, and he'll give you a written report at the end of the inspection. He'll review everything with you, and now you can make an informed decision going forward. And the final important subject clause is reviewing the strata property minutes. So every strata property, or most, if you're self-managed, maybe you don't have all the minutes, but most strata properties, condominiums, duplexes, townhomes have a set of minutes from all their meetings, and that'll also help us determine how the properties run, and if it's run well, and they're repairing things that need to be repaired, or delaying, deferring things. So those are red flags we need to look at. And again, I'll guide you through that as well. So those are the main conditions of the contract for purchase and sale. Okay, so once we review all those things, there's deadlines on those subject clauses. It'll say, okay, today is October 16th. Next Wednesday, whatever that is, that's the deadline for us to do all of this due diligence for those subject clauses. And then if you're happy with everything, the inspection was great, the title's great, the property disclosure's great, the financing's done, we'll remove those subject clauses because they'll be fulfilled, and that's when this contract becomes firm and binding and you have bought the property, okay? So once we remove subjects, there's no going back, it's yours, otherwise you may get sued by the seller. So you have to make sure that you understand that's a serious thing once you remove subjects. Okay, so going on to page number 5, your completion, possession, adjustment dates. You want to know when would you like to move into this property. So typically the move-in dates are from 4 weeks to 6 weeks after we write the offer, okay, depending on your situation and seller situations, but that's usually on average 4 to 6 weeks. And completion means when the title is transferred from your name, or from Sean Mendes' name to Jennifer Lopez's name, or to your name. And possession is when you actually get the keys, and that's usually 2 days after completion. On page number 7. So, and by the way, the little highlighted parts is where you both buyer and seller have to initial. So everything is initialed, so everyone is clear on every single little option. And so on item number 21A, so that's where I would write in my name because I represent Jennifer Lopez. And then on item number B, Josh Flagg will be there because he represents Sean Mendes, okay? So your agency representative will be included in this contract. The next page shows us there's a deadline to this offer. We're not just gonna give this offer to this Sean Mendes and just wait around until he decides to respond. There's a deadline to this offer, okay? So usually it's about 24 hours. So if we wrote this offer tomorrow morning, Sean Mendes would have to respond by Friday morning, okay? So we always put a deadline in there so that we know that everyone knows when we need a response by, okay? And then After that, the buyer and seller sign under buyer and seller. And you also, this is new to the contract, you have to indicate whether you're a resident or Canadian citizen. In this case, Sean Mendes is a Canadian resident. I'm just putting the resident, I don't know. But Jennifer Lopez is a non-resident, so we have to disclose that legally. So as a buyer, if you're non-resident, there's tax implications, which we're not going to get into today, but I'm happy to discuss that with you after. Okay, so what are the fees involved? No real estate fees for you guys. That's the great news. The sellers actually pay for both realtors for the selling side and the buying side. So that's a good thing for you. The inspection typically is $500 to $600. That's an additional cost you will have to pay if you decide to go with an inspection. Again, I always recommend it's a good idea, but it's totally optional. It's up to you. You decide that. Property transfer tax is the same as property purchase tax. Heather touched on that. It's 1% on the first $200,000 to 0.5 on the remainder. So on this $1 million property, you're looking at an additional $18,000 just in property purchase tax, which goes to the BC government. Okay. First-time home buyers, there are little perks. If it's a property under $500,000, you don't pay the property transfer tax. So that's a little perk you have, but you have to be a resident of the property. You can't buy it as an investment. Legal fees upon completion is $900 to $1,000 or $1,100, depending on the yes. And then government incentives. Okay, I'm going to just review this really quickly because we're wrapping up time. So if you're purchasing under $500, it's for you to live in. You're a Canadian citizen. You don't pay property transfer tax. So good savings. Newly built home, brand new properties, condos, if it's under $750, you don't pay the property transfer tax. Again, you have to live in it. Don't forget, you can't be an investor. GST rebate for brand new properties. The limit is $450. It's really hard to find anything brand new unless you go to the suburbs far away. And the maximum rebate there is $6,300. It's not even 100% of the GST. RSPs, Heather covered, you can use up to $35,000 each partner for a down payment, and then that has to be paid back within 15 years. Welcome to your new home. That's console. I feel like I really rushed through that really fast.
No, it's great.
I saw some faces looked like they're okay, and some very confused faces. So